total war concept in the context of world wars and modernity. Introduction. A total war concept describes the situation when war is seen as the usual deal. Everyone, including people and countries, is in a state of war for their own reasons. While it seems barbaric and is certainly not the best solution to the conflict, it heavily influenced people's lives, and its impact can still be seen today. Modern ideas of states and nationalities are remnants of the post-war world, while now governments and people try not to repeat those mistakes that led to bloodshed in the past. The total welfare systems are those remnants, too, despite sounding strange that war improves the people's well-being. The concept and its realizations. The concept of total war was developed with European colonialism when each country strived to conquer the larger and the richer territory, but its culmination was the First World War. It was the Great War, which engaged the whole world and almost all developed nations and continents. Expeditionary forces were widely used during the war to reach the most remote parts of the world and conquer enemies even there. The industry was rebuilt to serve the war's needs and solve soldiers' problems. All state systems and structures, from governments to civil societies, became the elements of the warfare machine. The total war as the usual war was described by a German soldier and writer Ernst Jünger. He developed it as the will to defeat enemies and connected it with German nationalism. While civilized people often consider war an amoral and devastating action that leads to suffering, the total war concept sees it as the heroic act of willpower. It is not only total but also permanent, and it is considered good because the strongest, the most willed, should win and rule. During the First and, especially, Second World Wars, there was active propaganda, influencing those views and stimulating people to fight even more. Thus, the world wars were not only large-scale warfare but also highly fierce and pervasive, when people were willing to combat and die for specific ideals. Second World War was an even more large-scale and cruel war. It was started by authoritarian and totalitarian militaristic states based on the idea of domination of particular nations and ideologies over others. Nazi Germany, led by Hitler, conquered most of Europe in less than 2 years and almost without resistance. They could complete this due to the heavy propaganda and ideology that forced them to act deliberately and willfully. Such active, intense propaganda was also active during the First World War, but it was mainly aimed at demonizing and vulgarizing the enemy. For example, enemy soldiers, peasants, and women were described as comic, grotesque, and obscure compared with the motherland. This was present during the Second World War too, but in addition, it was extensive propaganda of militant and aggressive ideologies. Such great activity and stimulation led to a high persuasiveness of those wars and their heavy influence on human civilization. Total war and modern world. 2 world wars have shown the principle of total war in the most literal sense, but it is also present in modern politics. While the current world is primarily peaceful, it is heavily influenced by the total war concept and its realization in the First and Second World Wars. Welfare elements, such as pension systems, were first implemented in the context of war in most European countries. For example, in post-war Austria in 1918, certain benefits were implemented for war veterans who could not reintegrate into society easily. At the same time, not all welfare elements are directly connected with the war situation. However, unemployment benefits, which are now common in Europe, mainly developed from the post-war benefits in times of economic recovery. Another essential element developed in the context of total war is the variety of tools for psychological influence on people. Propaganda is still a powerful tool for politicians, governments, and various organizations, not only in the context of war. This psychological instrument may influence people and manipulate their minds, but it can also be used to induce courage and willpower. For example, there is a comparison of the Nazi forces with the U.S. Army soldiers in Iraq, who showed much less commitment to war when facing ISIS there. The modern advertising industry is similar to propaganda in many ways. For example, many charity organizations use propaganda methods to induce compassion and eagerness to help and, thus, to pay them. It is also often used by corporations to create commitment of someone toward a particular brand. A prominent example is Apple Incorporated. Their marketing campaigns talk about the great idea behind their electronics, which make people unique and different. Thus, propaganda methods continue to develop in the modern world and manifest in their more peaceful form. Conclusion. As one can conclude, the total war concept is comprehensive and influential. It is probably the intrinsic quality of humanity that may express itself in the grim form of war. Its definition, such as those of Ernst Jünger, shows that people have the will to fight and die. That is why those wars were worldwide and total. Their impact was extremely profound. The modern welfare system is partly influenced by post-war unemployment benefits and veteran support systems, and propaganda is still an essential part of the world.